All right. We will go ahead and get started. It is Friday at just 3:01. Welcome to the 2024 On Scene First Winter and Spring ENP study group. This is week 7, if you will. This week, we're going to be talking about wireless stuff. I had mentioned in a previous session that we would get more into the wireless stuff, and here we are. Just need to do a couple of housekeeping things as usual. So if you have stumbled across this video on YouTube and it is anywhere before January 19th, 2024, and you would like to join the live study group that we have going on, just go ahead and jump onto the onscenefirst.com website, go to training and study ENP, or scan the QR code there on your screen and go ahead and register. And my lovely assistant will get you access to the Google group and the calendar invite for each of the live sessions. You don't have to be on live. As you know, everything is recorded and the materials are provided at some point between Friday afternoon and the end of the day, Monday, sometimes Tuesday morning, depending on my schedule. If you're watching these after January 19th, 2024, and you would like to gain access to all of the recorded materials, the PDFs, the MP3s, and any additional data and information that I've provided, I just drew a blank there. Any additional information that I provide, as well as some practice exams that I'm hoping to start pushing out in the very near future. The next study group will be the next live study group is set to start on March 8th, and we will only be having one each year after that, unless something changes, but that's the way that we have to roll for a little bit. We've also partnered this year with the NINA Ontario. Super excited about that. If you want more information on the Canadian side of the NINA ENP exam, you can go ahead and scan that QR code, head on over to their website, and those folks are super helpful over there. Or, as some folks have been doing, go ahead and message me, and I will put you in touch with Miss Kate, and she'll give you all the information that you need. I want to say thank you to our premier study group, Rapid SOS. They have been super supportive since I started this study group in early or mid 2021, and this is the 7th study group, and they have been a premier sponsor every session, and I am beyond appreciative of them doing that so I can continue to do this for you guys. We also have some scholarships that are available. I want to say thank you to our scholarship sponsors. Rapid SOS allows their sponsorship allows for 2 of those. Responder Services Consulting has provided a scholarship this time, as well as one each of the past year study groups. So super appreciative of them. And LB Comms, they have also allowed us to have a few over the last year or so. So we're super appreciative of them. And this year we're able to give away 7 ENP study group, ENP exam scholarships because of these sponsorships. So if you want scholarship information, head on over to onscenefirst.com /scholarship and make sure that you get that submission in by December 8th, and we will be awarding them on December 22nd. So if you have put in for a scholarship, don't register for the exam yet. You will have a couple of weeks to do that based on the timing. So there's that. There are some other scholarships available. I just don't know the timing of their scholarships or the criteria. But if you are from Texas, from Tennessee, head on over to Texas NINA or Tennessee NINA, and check out the information that they have available. And 911 Wonder Woman also has the fireworks scholarship, which can be used for the ENP exam. I think it just closed recently. I think I just saw something there, but if you're watching this after the fact, make sure that you check these out if you're looking for a sponsorship for the exam fee. Also, a shameless plug for the On Scene First store. As many of you know, I do a lot for 911 and love to give back where I can. And by selling merchandise, it allows me to do that. So if you haven't checked it out yet, we have some shirts over there, our new challenge coins, and a bunch of stickers, and a few new stickers will be coming out in the near future. So if you've purchased something from there, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I'm going to be putting out a post in the near future about some of the amazing things I've been able to do with those funds over the last couple of months. So thank you for your continued support. We're going to jump into wireless. As always, I never know how long the presentation is going to take each week. I do have an hour and a half buffer in there just in case it goes over. Some sessions are only an hour, some are an hour and a half, some have gone over an hour and a half. But just know that I'm not bailing on you. You will have all of the information. If we end in an hour, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour and a half, you will have all of the information you need by exam time. So just a quick reminder too, I did mention it last week, but for anyone that might be on different this week and didn't get a chance to watch the video from last week, I did update the PDF for weeks 2 and 3 on the Google Drive. So if you did print those out, just know I had to make a couple of updates for some information that there was a link that was not working on the Alley page. And there was a word that needed to be added because I apparently missed the word not, and it changes the definition of one of the terms. So just know that they are there if you need to re-download those since they were posted. So the first thing I'm just going to do a quick overview about that's listed on the body of knowledge is the methods for 911 call routing. Some of them I'm going to go into a little bit more detail later in the session, the wireless call routing, and then even more in depth when I go over the next generation 911 stuff, and there's going to be some routing stuff in there as well. So there's little pieces that you'll get today and then more pieces later. And if you notice, some of the terms that we've already discussed will be starting to come back around, and you'll be able to start putting the pieces in the puzzle. So the methods for 911 call routing go back to the basic 911 days, which we talked about a few weeks ago. Then we moved over to enhanced 911. And I'm not going to go into these in this particular part. Just know that if they're referring to the different methods of 911 call routing, this is what they're referring to. So the basic 911, enhanced 911, and I will reiterate that enhanced becomes enhanced because of the selective routing nature of that call routing. That's one of the big things that I know will come back up again. Wireless 911 call, E911 information, and then VoIP 911 calling. Like I said, we're not going to go into each one of these because we're going into them in different areas. So I'm not going to spend too much time there. The information is on the screen there if you should want to go through it, but I'm pretty sure most folks on here know what basic, enhanced, wireless, and VoIP 911 is. So there's that. And then next generation 911 is going to have its own whole week, and chances are we will be an hour and a half that day, if not more. And that should be coming up in the next few weeks. So as far as wireless goes, how many of you had a bag phone that's sitting over there? I remember my dad had one, and I just thought that would be a fun picture to put up there, remembering, you know, back in the, I would say late 90s-ish is when my dad had that particular type of phone, maybe mid 90s, maybe even earlier 90s. I'm not sure exactly when, but I just remember being in his truck and I thought he was the coolest. Well, he is the coolest, but there's that. And so as far as wireless devices go themselves, a device with the ability to transmit voice and data without the need of a should be of a physical connection to some type of source. And with the wireless, we also are going to have network routing. I've updated this presentation from the last couple of study groups. I've done a few diagrams. I do think it's worth your while to spend some time on this particular presentation, really having an understanding of how the wireless call process goes. Because some folks had come back and said, there was some information on there on the wireless and some of the terms that we're going to go over here today. So what I know that helps me when I'm trying to learn something is I will create diagrams and I will follow in the study manual, create the diagram. If I don't understand a term, I'll go Google that term and then just keep going from there. And that's how I learn a lot of the things that I learn. And then with each study group, I build it out a little bit more. And therefore, that information, it starts to make sense. But for those of you that are taking the exam, it is important to have a working knowledge of how some of these routing things are going through the system, and the terms keep coming up. The other thing that drives me crazy, and I feel like one of these days I'm just gonna like kind of write my own study guide in a logical sequence. But one of the things that is challenging with the NINA study guide, and I have brought it to their attention, is that there are terms that are interchangeable and they may call it one thing in one place and then call it something else in another place in the study guide. And that can be a little bit confusing. So I try to put both terms here when that takes place, so it isn't as confusing. So as far as the network routing call goes, you'll see that calls from our cellular phones are received from the cell tower by the mobile switching center. So you'll see in one of the diagrams, when that 911 call gets placed, it goes to the tower. The tower determines what mobile switching center it's going to go to based on the location of that tower. And it is sent to that mobile switching center. And then that word center is going to come back, and it's going to be a little confusing, but I'm going to see if I can really clean it up for you. The switching center, the mobile switching center, will automatically assign. Now, it's not actually the switching center, which is the location. It is a piece of equipment inside the switching center, which is called a mobile positioning center. And that is what actually assigns the unique identifier to the cellular device known as the pseudo ANI or P-ANI or fake phone number, that will allow that cellular call to now maneuver through a network and a system that it was not built for. So it has to kind of fake it till it makes it. And if that helps you remember what the pseudo ANI or the P-ANI is it's a fake number that has to help the wireless 911 call navigate through a system and a routing path that wasn't built for. And then once it has its pseudo ANI, that information will then be sent to the selective router, and it will connect the call to the PSAP based on the original tower location, because that gets pulled through. But there's a few other steps in there. But this is the general gist of the routing of a wireless 911 call. So we know that there needs to be the tower. We know there needs to be a selective router. We know there's a switching center, and that there needs to be a P-ANI assigned to it. So what a lot of folks don't know, and I'm going to go to the last bullet point there to come back, is we didn't hear a lot about phase 0 because phase 0 didn't actually exist until phase 1 became available. So it was called phase 0 only after phase 1 arrived. It was never intended to be phase 0. I think if you go back, you'll realize, like, anytime we start moving forward with some type of technology, we don't realize the magnitude of what it's going to become. And so something is going to be that foundation. And phase 0 was the foundation of wireless 911 call routing. So basic wireless is equivalent to basic 911. That really never existed. When phase 0 was implemented, it was kind of like a speed dial button versus what it became a little bit later. So imagine, if you will, phase 0. If I was to pick up the phone in my home and dial 911, it was almost equivalent to, it's just going to send that call right to the nearest place that accepts 911. There was no location routing. There was no, if it's this and then that and all that. It was just a speed dial button that says, if somebody presses these 3 buttons together, this call has to go here. And so that was the mindset behind phase 0. The Mobile Switching Center, the MSC, then translated 911, those 3 numbers, to represent a 7 or a 10-digit number to the PSAP or wherever that call was going to go. So we're going to talk more about the 7 to 10 digits and then to the 20 digits, because I do know that there is a question about the 20 digits on the exam, or there was anyway. So I want to make sure that you really understand that. So as far as phase 1 goes, the delivery of the wireless 911 call came into the 911 center with a callback number and identification of the cell tower from where the call originated. That's all you were getting with the phase 1, was the callback number and the tower in which that call hit. I'd be curious, anyone in the chat, I've asked this before, but I really haven't got much of an answer. When we started receiving 911 calls in Massachusetts from wireless devices, in my PSAP, we never just got wireless phase 1 calls. We always got phase 1 and phase 2. I'm just curious if there's anyone in the chat that ever experienced a period of time where they just got wireless phase 1. Like, was this something that happened rather quickly? Was it something that lasted over time? I'm just curious. But I haven't really found anyone that said, oh yeah, we took wireless 911 for, a couple of years and then we started getting phase 2. Because when we started getting them, whenever a wireless 911 call would come in from our jurisdiction, it would go to the state police first, and then it would come to us. And by the time it would come to us, it would already have phase 2 information if it was available. So I'm just curious. The second piece is the cell sector usually determines the call routing. So in wireless phase 1, that was pretty consistent, that the location determination was based on whichever tower it hit. Wireless service providers were required to send wireless phase 1 to requesting PSAPs by April 1st, 1998. So it's going to be right around that time where the phase 1 stuff was coming in. And that April 1st date, no joke, that April 1st date meant, it didn't mean that the wireless service provider had to provide it to every PSAP. If you notice, the word there is requesting. So you had to request to have the wireless phase 1 information delivered to your PSAP, and then the wireless service provider had to make that happen by April 1st, 1998. Wireless phase 1 continued So there was an FCC mandate that required the PANI and callback number to be delivered to the PSAP. And then we're going to go back to CAMA trunks. If you remember, the CAMA trunks or CAMA type routing was originally used for toll calls. Remember that, and whenever I have something that I know will come up again, I will repeat it and get it out there. So CAMA trunks were originally used for toll calling, but then after that had become part of the emergency call routing system. And at that time, only 7 to 8 digits were able to be pushed through to the PSAP. So that's going to create a little bit of an issue when you have area codes and such, and then later the PANI information, etc. So I'm going to start to build a foundation right here. Wireless phase 1 is in the beginning, right? 7 to 8 numbers. That's a smaller number, and we tend to grow. And so later we're going to see at a different point in time where there are up to 20 digits that are able to be delivered. This is going to, again, I'm being thoughtful in the way that I want to explain this, is that we're going to start from the beginning. Wireless phase 1, only 7 to 8 numbers were able. Eventually, I think it went up to 10. But later that standard allowed for up to 20 to be delivered. Now, I don't remember exactly what the question was about the 20 digits, but there is one on there, and I have a pretty good way to help you remember all of the information that is surrounding that 20 digits in any way that they could possibly ask it, I think anyway. So some of the terms that were introduced with wireless phase 1, and we did go over PANI earlier when we talked about, I forget which other week it was, but that pseudo Annie, P Annie, is a fake phone number. It's like an imposter, right? It's an assigned telephone number that is used to support the routing of wireless 911 calls. When I created that little image right there, I should have put what an appropriate PANI looks like, which is usually the area code for the jurisdiction in which you're located. And then the second set of digits, the ones that are usually that exchange in the middle, you're going to see is consistently 511. And that's indicating that that is the PANI number. It could also be identified as an emergency service routing key. That's that next term that you see there, ESRK. We're only touching base on this today, the ESRK, but just know that it's equivalent to the PANI a little bit later on in the routing. So just like the PANI allows that call to get where it needs to go, and it allows it to move it through the system, you also need a key to let it into the system, right? So the emergency service routing key, ESRK, is a 10-digit North American numbering plan number that uniquely identifies a wireless emergency call, and it is used to route the call through the network and retrieve the associated alley data. And I will point this out in one of the diagrams that I have for you. So I have the picture of the key because you need the key to get the information into the selective router to get it to pick which place that it needs to go. So without a key, you're not getting in. So you can think of it that way. And then the emergency service routing digits, ESRD, is actually the digits in that phone number. So a 10-digit North American plan number that uniquely identifies a base station, a cell site, or a sector that is used to route wireless emergency calls through the network. The ESRD may also be used by the PSAPs to retrieve the associated alley data. So these three terms could potentially be used interchangeably. So if you see a question on it, just make sure you're reading the question And if it sounds like it wants to let you into the system and like actually route the call versus using the numbers to bring back information, that's going to be the difference between the key and the digits. Hopefully that makes sense. So here's just an example of the pseudo ANI or the ESRK, Emergency Service Routing Key. I actually took a picture of something that I wanted to send, that I wanted to put in here. I apologize, I didn't put it in there, but I will add it to the PDF when I upload it, and it will probably be on the next slide. But I have access to a response from a telephone company. So there was an attorney requesting all of the raw data on a particular phone number that called into 911 for a particular incident. And the phone service provider had sent back a message, sent back an email and said, we would need the ESRK, the Emergency Service Routing Key. And for somebody that is not in 911, that could have been a little confusing. But what it's going to do is that ESRK is going to be able to identify everywhere that phone went in the system. So if you're requesting all kinds of information, it's not going to be able to just trace it by the phone number. And that was always a misconception that I had, is that if I needed to subpoena information on a wireless phone number that called, you could just subpoena information on the wireless phone number itself. But the ESRK or the PANI is going to follow that number through the entire system. And that is part of the process. So just know that the pseudo ANI and the ESRK is one and the same, but it isn't always called that on your ALI screen. So on this particular screen right here, you'll see that it says main number. Well, maybe that's the main number that directed it into the center, not sure. But I have several ALI screens that I could show you, and most of them it's under something different. I don't know if I've ever seen it labeled PANI. I don't think I've ever seen it labeled ESRK, but that's what that particular number is, and you can see that 511 in the middle. So now let's move to wireless phase 2. Wireless phase 2 is the delivery. I'll fix that typo. When they deliver a wireless 911 call with phase 1 information requirements plus location, and has selective routing based upon those coordinates that the location is revealing back. The most common, this is where things are going to get a little wonky. There's going to be terms that are going to be crossing over each other, but I have separate slides that are going to accommodate this broken out in just a couple places. So the most common method of delivering wireless phase 2 wireless 911 calls is based on the JSTD, which is standard, not something else you might be thinking, 036, which is also called wireline compatibility mode. And if I had to just give you a quick definition of wireline compatibility mode, what I want you to envision is that we have a wireline phone network that we now have to put a wireless device 911 call onto that wireline network system process. So when you break down wireline compatibility mode, it's basically giving you a way to send that wireless call through a already established wireline network. So wireline compatibility mode makes it so that wireless call can enter in to the wireline network. Hopefully that makes sense. It was originally known as non-call path associated signaling. In phase 1, I'm trying to thoughtfully think. You will get this, I promise. I have pictures and everything. But in phase 1, this type of system was called non-call path associated signaling. When we move into phase 2, because we're going to be sending much more data, additional information as far as the location information goes, they're going to be using selective routing, etc. When we get to phase 2, this is where it now becomes wireline compatibility mode. Okay. And then there was an upgrade at this same time that was made to the ALI databases to provide more available data. So as data was becoming available in phase 2, they had to upgrade the databases to be able to receive that information and provide that information to come back. As far as the Canadian Wireless E911 phase 2, there's a section in the manual that our dear friends to the north will be going over when we do our session together with them. And it's looking like it might be towards the end of December. So just know that that's coming as well, and we are not forgetting you. Okay, here we go. I know that there are some questions regarding non-path associated signaling and call path associated signaling. And it took me a really long time to try to figure out a way to remember which one was which. And here we go. So non-call path associated signaling is a method for delivery of wireless 911 calls in which the mobile directory number and all call associated data are passed from the mobile switching center to the PSAP outside of the voice path. So if no additional data was coming, then it would take one route. And when I say additional data, I'm referring to location and phone number, etc. So just voice to voice, no phone number coming with it, no caller ID, no nothing. And if we go back in time, remember when we talked about the 7 to now 10 digits, that was earlier on, right? So non-call path is earlier on. There wasn't a way for that additional information to get into the system. They had to put that band-aid on. They had to create a different route. They had to create a shortcut. So that's what I want you to think of when we look at the non-call path signaling NCAS. This is a delivery of the associated data outside of the normal path. This is where we're building out this new network. We got to figure out a way to get there, and we're going to take a shortcut. And that's why I have a little sports car there. And I have the sports car there for 2 reasons. A sports car never stays on the path that it's supposed to be traveling on. Do you ever watch a sports car in traffic? It's like zoom, zoom, zoom. And sometimes they go into the breakdown lane and they're like, zoom, and then they'll get off the highway and then zoom, 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 and then get back on. That's what I want you to envision when you're thinking about non-call path. They're not taking the traditional path. The other thing is a sports car. It doesn't hold as many numbers. It's little. Isn't that cool? Don't you love that analogy? Do you get that analogy? Tell me in the chat if you get that analogy, because this is the way my brain has to process it. If it's a non-call path, it's going to be that little sports car. It's only going to deliver the 7 to 10 digits. We're making the best that we can, and it's going outside of kind of the traditional route of signaling. So there's that. Now, the call path signaling is a method for delivery of wireless 911 calls in which the mobile directory number and all call associated data are passed from the switching center to the PSAP via the voice path. So that's where the school bus is. It's going to follow the route that everything else is going on. It's pretty consistent. The route is the same when we take a school bus, and it holds much more numbers. Much more numbers than just a little sports car that's not taking the correct path. Thank you, Crystal. I appreciate you validating my crazy brain. And that 20 digits is going to accommodate the callback number and the peony number. So excellent. Thank you. Some folks are just posting right to the host and panelists. So I appreciate that, because sometimes my brain works in mysterious ways, and that I always try to, when something's really confusing to me, I try to come up with a way that is going to make sense to others. And I will make sure that there's some practice exams on this as well. But that callback number and the peony are going to be able to get through there. I remember when I was taking my exam and it made reference to the 20 digits. I'm like, what 20 digits would be coming in on a 911 call? It's not 20 digits at one time. It's the capability of sending both the callback number that will end up in the Annie location, as well as the peony number that will end up in that main section or wherever your peony is located. So there's that. So hopefully that makes sense. All right. So now let's go back to the wireline compatibility mode. And no, that's not Woman Crush Monday. It's wireline compatibility mode. Remember, we had a wireline system. Everything worked great. Here come the cell phones. People other than drug dealers and doctors were starting to get cell phones. So they had to figure out a way to get them through the 911 system. So they kind of made the best of what they could do. And so wireline compatibility usually means ensuring a system or device can operate according to wired communication standards. It indicates a setting or configuration enabling a system to work with wired networks or traditional telephone lines. There is a big pro and a big con. The pro of using wireline compatibility mode is that it doesn't require significant upgrades to the 911 selective router, the PSAPs, customer premise equipment, and which those things could be totally much more expensive. So the pro is they don't have to do a lot of heavy lifting. They can kind of get around it cost effectively. The negative piece of it is that the peony delivered with the call requires that peony to be sent somewhere else and has to bring it back. So everything's not coming into the 911 center at one time. And that's where we can run into issues where, you know, if there's more steps in the process, if the 911 call comes in, the peony and the Annie are delivered via the call path with all the stuff. Everybody's getting on the bus together. When it's all delivered to the PSAP together, like that would just be amazing, right? But unfortunately, when we're using wireline compatibility mode, meaning we have to go outside the network, right? So if you remember, wireline compatibility mode and the NCAS, non-call path are very similar. They're both going outside of the traditional means. And going outside that traditional means there's only 7 to 10 numbers that are coming back. So the con is, because it's using the wireline compatibility mode, because it has to go outside this network and do things wonky and do things differently, and it's only able to put 2 people in the seat in a little sports car, then that peony number, once it hits the PSAP, is going to have to go back out to a database and then bring that information back. So with the more steps we have, the more challenging it becomes, not challenging, the more chances for an error to happen. There's more chances for something to be missing when it comes back. Okay. So, and then I'm just going to go back here again because I do think that there's relevant things here, is going back to comparing the term NCAS is classified by that J standard 36C, jointly published by the Telecommunications Industry Association, the TIA, and the Alliance for Telecommunications Industry Solutions, ADIS. It's also called the wireline compatibility mode. So again, when we go back, there are terms that are meaning two different things. But if you think about the way that I said it, and you know that the first one is the non-call path, non-traditional routing, little sports car going outside of the route, you can compare that to a wireline compatibility mode, that there needs to be some type of improvisation. I don't know. Improvisation. The word I'm looking for. You know what I mean? There needs to be some type of thing that happens to make this call get through the system. So there's that. Identifying that mobile switching center. This is the equivalent of a central office for wireless calls. So the MSC, Mobile Switching Center, is equivalent of the central office, and it provides switching functions for wireless calls. Probably going to be in the same place as a central office, but it is identified as a separate entity, a separate building. And I would say that the word center should give it away, but center is actually going to screw us in this capacity. I don't understand why the next definition also has the word center, because it's not actually a center. It's a functional element or a functional entity of the process. So mobile switching center is just like the central office where you have your switching mechanisms. Remember, we talked about those a little bit earlier. The switching mechanisms are located in there. Well, this next thing, the mobile positioning center, I'll just say, is centered inside of the mobile switching center. Okay. It is also called a gateway mobile location center. I don't have anything for that yet. I just remember what they are. Haven't figured out a wonky way to remember them, but the MPC/GMLC, those are usually put together just like you see here. So maybe that's a way to remember it. And hopefully if they do have it on the exam, they have them together as that location within the location. Yeah, Laurel, absolutely. It's the thing that's going to give the location with inside the location of the location. And yeah, absolutely. But it's a functional entity that interfaces the wireless originating network and the emergency service network. Okay. So you'll see it in an image in just a few minutes, but that call is going to go into the switching center, the mobile switching center, where the switching is going to take place. Okay. And then the MPC/GMLC receives, forwards, stores, and controls position data within the location service network. The MPC/GMLC restricts access to provide position information only while the emergency call is active. So call hangs up, we're not getting that location anymore, right? That was kind of a big thing with device-based hybrid location, which we will talk about in a few minutes. But so yeah, so the mobile switching center is the center. It's where the switching, it's the building in which the switching is going to take place. And then the mobile positioning center is it's in the center of the building. I don't know. I don't love the way that they have this. This doesn't make sense. This should be called something else, not a center. But maybe that's what's going to get you to remember it, is that they're both silly, but it controls the position data. So there we go. And here we go with the call flow. Oops, I forgot to add this to my little animation. So ignore the peony that's hanging out on the right side of the screen. Damn it, I was so close. All right, so this is the wireless phase 2 call flow with wireline capability mode. And I tried to make it as easy as possible to understand. And you will see this again. I'm going to go over this again when we do the next gen, because there's some other terms that are going to be introduced. This is a simple, just super simple. The one that we go over next is going to have a little bit more data and detail in the next gen section, but 911 call gets placed. Call goes to the network tower. Maybe it's your tower. Maybe it's not your tower. If it's not your tower, but that's the closest tower that you have access to, it is still going to send your call through this network. But the biggest challenge is there is not going to be any subscriber or phone number information with it. And that's where we sometimes end up with a 911 area code call that is actually a perfectly good working cell phone. And I'll talk more about that in just a little bit. But the 911 call gets placed from the wireless device. It goes to the closest tower that's going to deliver that call. Once it hits that tower, the call is now going to be sent to the mobile switching center, which is the facility that we discussed. When it is at the facility, the mobile switching center is going to identify the cell sector. That's why I have the little cone there. So cell sector, remember back in the day, you had the cell sector? I never said to my officer, I am 85% confident it's within 3,000 meters of the southeast corner of the tower on County Road, but whatever. So the MSC identifies the cell sector and the callback number, CBN, callback number. Once it identifies that information, it is now going to send it into the mobile positioning center, I guess, to get its position. How about that? It's going to go into the mobile positioning center to get its position. The mobile switching center is going to switch it from nothing to something. How about that? The mobile switching center is where it's going to switch the call into something that can now be sent into the mobile positioning center, where it is now going to get assigned the peony. So the MPC and the GMLC is what determines the peony and then sends it back to the mobile switching center. Once it gets back to the mobile switching center, it is now going to take that peony and the cell center sector and the voice, and it's going to send it off to the selective router or the E911 tandem. Again, terms that are used interchangeably that you'll see in different locations. But now here's the selective router. The selective router is going to decide which PSAP it's going to go to based on the information that it retrieved through the initial process. Okay. And then simultaneously, while the switching center is sending the peony and the voice and the cell sector to the selective router, simultaneously, it is sending that location information that is attached to it to the ALI database. And it's just going to hang out there. It's going to stay there until it is requested. So now what happens is that selective router has to figure out which PSAP it's going to go to. So it uses the selective router database. And we're going to have a whole section on databases. And we're going to reiterate this. And then I'm going to come back to this slide. And I'm going to say, see, this is what I was talking about, is the voice and the peony is sent to the correct PSAP at the direction of the selective router database. So the SRDB says, based on all of this information, this PSAP is the one that it should be going to. So as soon as that peony and voice and the Annie information, the phone number, gets to that location, because we're in wireline compatibility mode, right? So once that peony information gets there, this is where the wireline compatibility mode, it's the non-call path. So it's going around its butt to get to its elbow. It's taking a shortcut. It can only deliver the 7 to 10 numbers, but we need more information. So now the PSAP has to send that peony number, that's that peony on the side, to the ALI database, gets all the information that is attached to it, and it's going to send it back to the PSAP. Okay. And now we should have our phase 2 information. I hope that all makes sense. I tried to make it as simple as possible. If you look at the picture in your study guide, I forget what page it's on, but right where all the wireless stuff is, this is my version of the picture that's in that book. I couldn't understand the picture that was in that book. I didn't really know what they were trying. I wasn't picking up what they were putting down, but here's my version of it. So hopefully this is helpful. Okay. So if you have any questions, by all means, put them in the chat. Another section here is the actual location determination. There are 3 categories of location determination. So that's the information that is provided from the device, usually utilizing information from several mobile switching centers to determine the location, a few different areas. So first, there's the handset location. The handset location is specifically using GPS, the global positioning system, which we'll probably be going over next week. A lot of folks don't fully understand that these are either or scenarios, that a lot of folks thought when we were getting phase 2 location, it was GPS and triangulation, and that is not the case. The handset, if it has a direct line of sight to the GPS, it is able to send GPS-based location. We won't know, you won't know in the center if it's GPS or triangulation, because some wireless phase 2 calls still rely on triangulation. So again, when I worked for Rapid SOS, I realized there was some confusion on this, is that it's an either or situation. It's either the handset or triangulation. It is not both. And phase 1 and phase 2 have the ability to use triangulation. Another misconception that folks had was phase 2 used GPS and phase 1 used triangulation. And that's not the case either. The handset, if there is no direct line of sight, so if I'm in the basement, if I'm in a building, if I'm in a city with lots of buildings and my phone does not have a direct line of sight to the GPS, then it's going to rebound back to utilizing network triangulation to get that location to have it delivered. So handset uses GPS when it's available, network uses triangulation, and then device-based uses the operating systems location sensors, which there's a lot of location sensors on a device. That's why you see a lot of pictures there. We got some gyro sensors and some pedometers and pedestrian dead reckoning sensors, etc. So these are the most common location sensors that are used on device-based location. So first you have a satellite, so that's your GPS, Wi-Fi sensors, Bluetooth beacons, and accelerometers, which is how many steps it takes to get from this place to this place, and what direction you're going in and how many steps you've gone up and all that. So pedestrian dead reckoning sensors, gyro sensors, anything that is on your device that allows you to locate, use location services is going to be used. In your manual, there are 2 different types of device-based location listed. There are only 2 that are available for emergency services right now. And as a very excited thing that, as I was putting this presentation together, and I know Justin Whipple's on the call, and he's been with me since the beginning days at Rapid SOS. And in the beginning, when I was saying, hey, look, we're going to get Apple and Google to turn on device-based location. And when that 911 call gets placed, all of those location services on the device are going to be turned on, and they're going to get a precise location. And that location is going to be sent to, at the time, they called it the Rapid SOS NG 911 clearinghouse. And then that location was going to be sent to the 911 centers. And for the first year and a half at Rapid SOS, I traveled around the country selling a free product that didn't exist, hoping and praying that Apple and Google were going to do the right thing. And when I was looking for the information on it, I noticed the date. So this announcement right here, iOS 12 to give 911 precise iPhone location during emergencies, June 18th, 2018. This was the day that we announced it at the NINA conference in Tennessee. And that was super exciting. But the technology that Apple was using is called HELO, and that is in your manual. So it's called HELO, hybridized emergency location. It was available to be sent to the clearinghouse on iOS 12. Now, the ironic thing is in that little clip that you see down there, it says, Apple today said iPhones will soon provide 911 emergency services with more exact location of the callers. Since 2015, Apple has relied on HELO, which uses cellular GPS and Wi-Fi access points to estimate 911 callers' location. What a lot of people didn't realize is that it wasn't until September-ish or October-ish of 2018 that feature was actually turned on to go to Rapid SOS, to go into the 911 center, but they had been providing it to the network carriers since 2015, and it was not being delivered to the 911 centers. That's crazy, but just a little side note there. And then on the Android side, fast forward September 30th, I think that is, or late September, Google announced that they were going to be using their device-based location services and also sending it to the Rapid SOS NG 911 clearinghouse. But Android solution, the Google Android solution, is called ELS, Emergency Location Services. They are similar, but different. And just an important piece of information, important to note, again, listed in your manual, is that while Domino's knows where you are, Uber knows where you are, the device-based location, when it comes to 911 call delivery, has to have a higher level of accuracy. And so there's a lot of things that happen behind the scenes that make that happen. But just know that it's not the same as my Uber app or my Domino's app. It's better, actually. And I'm sure many of you know that today. So what are some of the wireless interconnection standards that we need to be aware of on the wireless side? These are things that you see every day, and then one that you may not have seen or known about, but you will now. So first, Bluetooth. So Bluetooth is used for short range communication between devices like smartphones, headphones, smartwatches, etc. Bluetooth allows data and audio and video to be transferred wirelessly. Bluetooth beacons are also used if I walk into Target and I have their app downloaded. My phone will talk to the app, will talk to their Bluetooth beacon and say, hey, look, I'm in your building, and have that ability to send short range things. Wi-Fi, this IEEE, I have seen it before, and I'm not sure if it was on the exam. So just know that that's attached to Wi-Fi, which we know Wi-Fi enables wireless location area networks, WLANs, smartphones, laptops, smart home devices, etc., to connect to the internet. Okay, that is covered in a certain area, so much wider than the Bluetooth. but it allows to connect to the internet. Bluetooth is allowing us to connect to each other, other devices. Wi-Fi is allowing us to connect to the interwebs. And then this, I bet you didn't even know this is what it was called. NFC. If this was not a G-rated show, I would tell you what I think NFC stands for. No clue. Because the amount of people that I saw sharing the privacy craziness about the iPhone last week. Number one, iOS 17 has been out for months. Number two, somebody got in their infinite wisdom to say, oh, hey, if you stand next to somebody, it's going to download all your personal data. It's never done that. It would never do that. I was blown away with the amount of people that were sharing these things. And this is what's wrong with society today. They read a headline and then they just share and they don't make decisions on their own. But NFC is near field communication. It facilitates communication between devices when they are brought close together, typically within a few centimeters. It's commonly used for contactless payment, ticketing, and sharing small amounts of data. It's no different than AirDrop, right? So if I want to send a picture to somebody, I have to go into my settings and make sure that it's on to send the information to somebody else. How did we get to the place where name drop, which we were able to do before, suddenly becomes this craziness? Baffling. And then Zigbee or Z-Waves, it's standards for low power, short range wireless communication between smart home devices, home automation systems, often use them to control lights, thermostats, and other smart devices in your home. And then the cellular standards of 4G, LTE, 5G, etc. This is basically govern the way that mobile devices connect to the cellular networks for voice and data communications. As the number gets higher, the capabilities, the wider the bandwidth, the faster it is. And that's what we're looking at with long-term evolution, which is LTE, and that's starting at 4G. Okay. So I'm pretty sure all you really need to know about this is LTE stands for long-term evolution. It's a type of technology for high-speed wireless communication, commonly known as 4G LTE. We are at 5G now, which is interesting. But again, our ENP study guide doesn't always catch up with where we are currently today. But just know that we're on 5G, and if not higher in the very near future. Okay. So it basically higher, faster, superhighway. Non-service initialized devices. This is listed on your body of knowledge, a little bit of information in your manual, but a non-service initialized device is a device that does not currently have a network connection, does not have capability of a subscription, doesn't have the ability to connect to its own network, etc. Back in the day, and I was just as guilty as it, because we didn't really know a whole lot about this. And I will tell you that a lot of folks didn't know about it until I'll say I started spouting off on it when we realized very quickly, when we rolled out the Rapid SOS portal, or Rapid Light, if you will. When I would talk to them about what the Rapid Light and Hilo and ELS, the Apple and Google connections were going to do, the first question I would get asked is, does this work on 911 area code phone calls? And my answer was always no, because there had to be a phone number attached to it. And when I was giving that answer, it was actually an error of ignorance, not intention. My entire 911 career, I was taught that if there's a 911 area code, it's a disconnected cell phone, which in turn translates into there is no subscriber information, there is no phone number, and therefore, no, the Rapid SOS emergency response data platform now would not be able to get that information back because there's no phone number attached to it. So that would be logical. But what we realized is that folks were asking the caller for the phone number that they were calling from, not the best number to reach you at. What number are you calling from? And when they would give back a phone number, that call taker would put it into the Rapid SOS portal and query that phone number, and data would come back. Location, maybe subscriber information. And folks started reaching out saying, hey, the lie detector determined what you said was a lie, is that there are 911 area code calls that are delivering location. And so we had to dig into that a little bit, but I will share that in just a minute. Not all 911 area code calls are NSI phones. There are some that are perfectly good working cell phones, what I just said. In this one on the left, you'll see a 911 area code here, and the class of service is wireless, not wireless phase one, wireless, which is way back into the wireless phase zero type. Wireless phase one is phase one. So in this particular situation, there's really nothing here with it. There's no ESN, there's no latitude, longitude, there's no confidence. It's very minimal information, because there's a high likelihood this is actually a disconnected cell phone. So if it's coming through as a wireless or wireless phase one, there's a high likelihood it is a disconnected cell phone. In this one, you see wireless phase two. We have a peony, we have a latitude, a longitude, and it too has a 911 area code. But this one was actually an active, perfectly good working cell phone that showed data on the Rapid SOS portal. So an NSI, non-service initialized device, is not always just a disconnected cell phone. So by definition in your book, a NSI phone is a non-service initialized device for which there is no valid service contract with any cellular provider. The 911 number way back in the day, now I'm going to say way back in the day because this is not the case anymore. And some folks think it is or may think it is, but it is not. And I did some investigative and defective detective work. But way back in the first report and order from the FCC, when they decided that they were going to deliver that all calls forward, all calls are deliverable to 911, whether they have a service or not, they said we have to have some way of kind of identifying. The way that the formula was supposed to be when that call got delivered was you're going to get a 911 area code. The numbers in the middle were going to be the ESN, which is the emergency service zone number. And then the last four of the telephone's IMEI. And that's not always consistent these days. So I'm just sharing it with you because it is listed there, and it's not consistent today. So to be able to actually trace one of these numbers is going to be a bit challenging. And if anyone has traced a 911 area code call and has like documented process, etc., please reach out to me. I would love to pick your brain on that. And then there's something that I coined the NSI imposter, and that's what I was just referring to. This, if you wanted to get more information on this particular thing, you can copy the 911 call forwarding requirements for non-service initialized phones, PS docket number 08-51. That's where this information is coming from. Specifically in that document, it's section C that is titled Protecting Calls to 911 from service initialized devices that may appear to be an NSI phone. So the record indicates, however, that in certain circumstances, a service initialized device may appear to be an NSI device to a CMRS, okay? Provider's network. So that's your mobile networks. This is just added information. You don't need this for the exam, but some folks will reach out and say, hey, can I have some more information on that? These are the reasons that are listed under that public safety document that are why calls will come into the 911 center with a 911 area code when they are a perfectly good working cell phone. The majority of the time, the call is riding in on somebody else's network. So if I have an AT&T phone and I'm in West Virginia and US Cellular is the only provider there, then my AT&T phone is going to jump on US Cellular and it's not going to have my information. So it'll display the call, it will deliver the call, but it's not going to display my information because it doesn't have it. But there are a bunch of other reasons there. You can look at those if you want. It's not on the exam, but I just feel like it's important information. If I'm going to talk about NSI phones, I will always talk about this. Here is the link to that particular document. When you get the PDF, you will be able to click on it and go right there. And then basically, bottom line, not all 911 area code calls are disconnected cell phones. Always ask for the phone number that they're calling from. My policy was when you ask the caller, you would ask, what is the number you were calling me from? A lot of folks will say, what is the best number to reach you at? Absolutely not in my book. You do what your policy says, but when you say to the caller, what is the best number to reach you at? If you had my mother-in-law on the phone and she happened to turn on our cell phone and she just happened to call 911 from it, if you asked her what is the best number to reach you at, she's going to give you her home phone number. And that is going to do you absolutely no good if you need to trace that call or if you need to determine if that location is available on the Rapid SOS portal. Why is that so important? I will go back to standing on my soapbox as to you should be, if you have access, well, first of all, if you don't have access to the Rapid SOS portal, shame on you. That is a tool that is beyond beneficial in so many aspects. But this is another reason why you should be logged into the portal at the beginning of every shift, because the last thing you want to happen is one of these calls to sneak in to your customer premise equipment, display a 911 area code, have no phone number, no location, and there's somebody screaming on the other side of that call that they need help. If you sign into the portal after the fact, it's not going to automatically display. But if you have jurisdiction view and that 911 area code call comes in, all you have to do is look at the portal. And if that was an actual working cell phone, you could have the phone number, you could have name, you could have additional data, you could have updated locations. It is a no-brainer to me that this right here in and of itself is a justification to have the Rapid SOS portal. And when I have folks that will say something along the lines of, well, we have an integration, we don't need the portal. Again, the lie detector determined that's a lie, because your integration is not going to query the actual phone number. It's going to query a 911 area code call against the Rapid SOS emergency response data platform. The only way for you to get that actual information is through the portal. So again, this is not a sales pitch. It's a no-brainer, right? So there you go. And if you want more information, I wrote this article way back when we started realizing that it no longer has my name on it on the Rapid SOS website, but that's okay. It just says that a team member wrote it, which was true. I was a team member at that time. But this gives you a little bit more information on how to handle those and locate non-service initialized devices using the portal. So there's that. So with that, that's all I have for you today. If you need anything, if you have any questions, I'll watch for a second, see if anyone has any questions in the chat. But I will get this stuff sent over to you and we will connect next week. It looks like I forgot to put my contact information on there at the end, but you guys know how to get in touch with me. Check out the social media. If you need to reach me, My email is teldridge@onscenefirst.com. And until next time, heroes, stay safe, stay strong, stay here. We need you.